right, we are back with another episode of the Gentleman Badass podcast. So today's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do for an episode. It's been a long time since we've recorded, and I think the last one that we did was towards the end of 2019 was the last one we recorded. We ended up releasing that episode in 2020, and I had to make a disclaimer because through that whole episode you were coughing. And I said, hey, here's the thing. We recorded this episode in like November or December before COVID was a thing. And even though, because you can hear yourself in the background, whether that was COVID or not, you were pretty sick with it. And pretty much life just got turned around and lots of things have happened since then. So we figured we'd do kind of a catch-up episode on what me and Mick have been up to over the last couple years. And then what we're looking to do moving forward with the podcast and with business and all that stuff. So good to see you again. Good to be in here.
Yeah, it's nice to be back on the air doing this again after a little hiatus. I will say, though, that season 1 was always intended to just be a little experiment to see how this thing would go. And then thanks to you guys' overwhelming support and bugging the bejesus out of Josh and I, it was kind of flattering to realize that the podcast was getting out there and kind of was relevant to a lot of people. And then some of the outreach that we had, the unusual places that we traveled to, and people are like, oh, yeah. I'll listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that happened to you at a couple of gigs and stuff like that. And
I had one guy, he looked at me, he kind of gave me a weird look, and he's like, are you Josh Kidney? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I recognize your voice from the podcast. I'm like, what? That has never happened to me before. And it's kind of interesting because when you're trying to track analytics for a podcast, you think it'd be pretty straightforward. And so unfortunately, at least the way that it works now, and maybe there's some better tools now than when I was trying to do it before, but it's hard to tell how many people are actually paying attention. And so when people mention out and about randomly that, when's the podcast coming back? We missed the podcast, that actually really helps. So, now that we've got some things sorted out, we've got a little more
popular demand.
Exactly.
Josh and Mick, the Gentleman Badass.
So
we're back, bitches.
Yeah. It's obviously been kind of, it's been a big couple years for most of the country and the world. But we've kind of been going through our own stuff above and beyond that. I think the first thing I want to bring up, and it's funny because it kind of seems like old news right now, but at the time it was pretty big deal. But you had some heart issues, like some pretty major heart issues. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I have shit genetics. Lot of family history, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. I mean, you name it. And I've always had it in the back of my mind, and which is probably why I've pushed myself and kind of lead the lifestyle I do too, because I know that, the creature living under my bed is there, and it could creep out any minute. So I've always tried to live a lifestyle that would kind of keep me ahead of that. I guess May. So I got COVID. My wife's pretty sure that I was the carrier monkey that brought it back from Europe. So I went to Ireland December of 19. My mom was really ill of a mystery bug. Now she had a lot of health problems. And I ended up spending about 2 weeks in a hospital over there, watching her eventually pass away, stayed there for the funeral, came back, just didn't feel good. And I kind of put it down to grief. And ended up with what we now know was COVID, was really sick. Fast forward then to May, and I still didn't feel good. And everybody kept talking about long COVID and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that thing really kicked my ass. I'm glad I was healthy, blah, 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 blah. And I went golfing one afternoon with a bunch of buddies. This is in May. And came home, I walked in the door, and my wife said, what the fuck is going on with your eye? And I was like, what? And she's like, what is going on with your eye? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, go look in the mirror. And I look in the mirror, and I actually only see out one eye anyway. And my whole eye was just completely bloodshot. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, nobody elbowed me doing jiu-jitsu. I can't think of how I could have popped a blood vessel. And I'm like, man, I'm swinging at a golf ball. Like, I'm not trying to kill it. Like, I don't know. So I kind of let it go a little bit that evening, and I'm thinking, man, what's going on? Like, why would I have burst blood vessels in my eye? Um, Obviously the pandemic is going on. We're not sure if we're allowed to be open or not. The gym is losing money. I'm under stress, and I was like, it's probably just stress. And I called a doctor friend of mine, and he's like, yeah, it's probably just stress. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. And so I just kind of let it go for a day or two. And then my wife's like, are you sure you're okay? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of tired. I'm kind of run down and, stressed. And kind of with her egging on a little bit, I start kind of thinking about it and kind of checked my blood pressure. And for me, it was high. Still not like crazy, but like higher than normal for me. And I was like, oh, wow, I must really be stressed. And this sucks running a gym in a pandemic. And so I had a good night's sleep, did a sauna, went to bed, got up the next morning, felt like unbelievable. And I was like, all right, I'm back. Come into the gym. I thought I'll just check my blood pressure, and it's even higher. But I felt completely normal. Long story short, I find out like about 2 weeks later after getting some more tests done that my widowmaker was 80% blocked. So I was essentially a time bomb walking around. That was May. They put a stent in and put me on a bunch of medicine, which was awful. I did not respond well to the medicine. And so back and forth, changing doctors, all kinds of stuff. I'm now on a protocol that I think is working, although that was May of 20. Last year, I found out that I have 3 more blockages, one above my stent, one below the stent on my widowmaker. Like they're like 30, 40%, something like that. So they don't actually do much about them. But then I have a vessel underneath, a collateral that's 100% blocked. That's the one that's giving me the problem. So now when I work out and train, I can't go nearly as hard as I used to. I get winded pretty quickly. If I do any kind of sprint thing, like I used to play soccer all the time. Haven't played soccer since then. So it's certainly kind of affecting me, but in my messed up fuckology, it's my new opponent.
Yeah.
And so I'm determined to crush it. So I've been doing a lot of things, trying out a lot of different things. And I think right now I kind of have a formula. They put me on statins. I didn't do well with them. So I convinced my doctor to not let me do a statin and just do some other lifestyle changes. Because for somebody like me, when I'm sitting in a cardiologist's office, everybody's looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing here? And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck am I doing here? Because I'm looking at most of the unfortunate people in there, and they're waiting to die.
Yeah.
And they're a little late to the game sometimes. So I just asked him, like, hey, don't treat me like everybody else in your office. Like, I get that medicine has a part and I'm not against it, but a lot of the heart medicines, the side effects are almost as bad as, when I was on the beta blocker, I literally felt like I had the flu every single day. I felt awful. I had no energy, no motivation. So I'm kind of on a protocol right now where I take chest pain medication in the morning. I take a dose of CoQ10. I'm taking some essential minerals in the morning. And then at nighttime, I take 2 chest pain medications, a baby aspirin, more antioxidants, CoQ10, another dose in the evening, and L-carnitine, And I've also just recently added metformin. And I think you and I have talked about metformin, and that a lot of the people in Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans, a lot of these kind of A-type personality, pillar fitness people kind of discovered metformin a few years ago. Metformin, for if you don't know, is actually a diabetes drug, glucophage, but it may have some profound anti-aging qualities, some brain health qualities with it too. So I'm kind of throwing the book at this thing, to live with coronary artery disease. There is a chance that I could undo it. I just need to stay healthy enough that my body will eventually grow collaterals and bypass itself. I just have to stay as healthy as possible to make sure that I can facilitate that. So, I can live with it. It sucks when I want to roll fast and I get winded, or a savage white belt wrestler comes in and we're rolling and I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is great and all, but God, I wish I had that other gear right now, to get this monster off me. So, but it is what it is. It's like I said, it's my new nemesis now. And so much of what I do in a day is, at the end of the day, I kind of do a little checklist, like, all right, did I kick this thing's ass today? Did I do what I'm supposed to do? And you just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of crazy because that happened. And, it was just completely expected from a guy like you, right? Perfect, in good health and good shape constantly, just living a life.
You mean
of fitness.
unexpected?
Unexpected. Yeah, I'm sorry. Unexpected. So
I was like, expected?
No,
I'm like, fuck off, Josh. No. I didn't expect it.
But, shortly thereafter, so that was happening, what, May, you said?
May is when I got the stent, yeah.
So later on that year, the first time I got COVID, I think it was in November, because we had played a show. We opened up for Logan Mize, and we played a show. It was when they were first letting people get back together with restrictions. Well, at that show, I ended up getting COVID. And that was kind of inconsequential. It wasn't that big a deal, other than it just hung around forever. I was really sick for 2 days, but then I had like a 99-degree temperature for 10 days. But through that process, since I was sick, I couldn't end up going to Kansas City with my wife. My wife went to Kansas City because her dad had blockage as well in his heart. And so I'm at home sick watching the dogs, and she goes to Kansas City. He's supposed to have his surgery. They put him under for surgery. When they get in there, they realize they thought he had one blocked artery. Ended up he had 4 blocked, and he had leukemia. So my father-in-law goes to sleep thinking he's going to wake up fixed, and he wakes up with 4 more problems, 4 more major problems. And they ended up getting it taken care of. The leukemia was pretty mild. It's the type that you can actually live with for a long, long time and not realize it. And turns out his brother has the same leukemia and has been living with it for 20 years. So really doesn't affect you much until you start seeing symptoms, and then they can take care of it. But then he ended up getting his blockages taken care of, a couple months later, and then had some complications for that. So it's like 2020, not only was it the year of COVID for me and the whole world, it was the year of heart issues for, seems like people that I know. And
I know. And, the conspiracy theorists, they're having a field day with this stuff, because I will go on record saying that I am politically against being told what to do most of the time.
Yeah.
But I do, some of the clientele that I work with are very high risk, traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's. It's not just personal training and jiu-jitsu. So in order for me to see those people, I had to be vaccinated. So I was in the front line of, healthcare workers that had access to a vaccine in the beginning. I wasn't really worried about a vaccine for myself. I just didn't want the clients I was working with going another month, 2 months without treatment. Because, especially with my TBI clients, you go a week or two, the window of opportunity is so narrow with them that you miss a couple of weeks
They decline really, really
yeah,
quickly.
you may never get it back.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm going to do the honorable thing here. I'm going to get vaccinated. So I get vaccinated in March, and then I have heart issues in May, and all my conspiracy theory buddies are like, oh, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Now, 2 years later, we're coming back going, well, hang on a minute. Maybe there's something to this, and it is what it is. If I had to do it all over again and I had a choice, maybe I probably wouldn't do the vaccine. I'm not going to do any boosters. Oh, and on the selfish note, I also wanted to go to Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, fuck it. Like, I'll take a shot so I can go down to Mexico and take shots.
Yeah.
So,
well, as far as I can understand, I don't think her dad was vaccinated. So I think once again, it was just kind of genetics for him. Can we say these days, is it okay to say, people are vaccinated and unvaccinated? Like, who knows? But it was what it was, and it is what it is. We made it through, and hopefully, I don't know, learn some lessons. So I don't know, from where I sit, it seems like you're probably thinking, I got a lot of time ahead, plenty of time to do stuff. And then you wind up with a diagnosis that makes you realize you might not have as much as you thought, or
100%.
maybe a whole lot less. What did that change? How did that change your thinking?
I think you realize that you're not bulletproof, that there's some diseases that can just get you whatever. Like I said, my cholesterol, the day I got my stent, my total cholesterol was 130. I mean, like beyond perfect. Everything about my lifestyle, my fitness, my health, I shouldn't have been sitting in a cardiology department.
Yeah.
In fact, before they discovered the blockage, I had already beat the treadmill test twice. And the first time around, this is before like the chest pain started to get really bad.
This is like the stress testing at the hospital.
I was on the treadmill for 22 minutes. And I'm like, will you guys just let me run? And they're like, well, we really don't let people run. And I'm like, yeah, but come on. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
We're
used to
gonna be here
running
all
on
day.
treadmill. Yeah. And so they bring in a PA who basically is standing there almost like holding my hand while I'm running on the treadmill. So then they get my heart rate up where I need it. And I jump off. They do an ultrasound. You get back on. And they're like, okay, have them do one more. So they bring my heart rate up. I'm running on the treadmill, jump off, ultrasound, get back on. I'm like, okay, what's next? And they're all just looking at each other and they're like, well, at this point, you're just showing off. And I was like, cool, can I leave?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, go ahead. So I left that stress test. I don't know if you remember that, or if you were here that day. So I have a bit of a sweat going. It's just down the road, the cardiology thing. So I come in the gym, I have a little bit of a sweat going. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to work out. So I get on the arc trainer, put a podcast on, and I'm going on the arc trainer, and my phone rings, and I'm like, cardiology? I was just there.
Yeah.
And I'm about ready to ignore it. And so I answer it, and I'm like, hello? And they're like, Mick, yeah. So we saw an abnormality on your stress test. I was like, what? I go, I'm on a elliptical right now. And they're like, maybe you should stop. And I'm like, I was like, what's going on? They're like, well, we don't know, but we want you to come in tomorrow for a heart cath. And that's when they put the stent in. But I was like, all right, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I feel good. And nope.
Yeah.
No. So, I think when you get a diagnosis like that, you do kind of think, all right, just like everybody else. I mean, when your time's up, your time is up. So I think it does make you take stock of where you're at in your life. Is there things that you still want to do? Is there things that are like important, or what's important, what's not important? And I think, I mean, I've always felt like I had an appreciation for life and where I'm at and all that stuff. But I do think that it has made me kind of evaluate some things, what's important, what's not. And on the other side, I'm far more adventurous taking risks. Because I'm like, I mean, yeah, I could. Like, I mean, I just did it in Mexico. I'm
Yeah.
hanging upside down, ziplining, and my wife's like, "Oh, you could die," and I'm thinking, "Well, I have coronary heart disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I could. I could have a heart attack today. Like, and I don't know because I didn't know I had. Like, I didn't have the warning signs that most people get. I'm like, fuck it. Like,
Yeah.
if I die today, it was a good day. Like,
Yeah.
and so I think that you do sometimes kind of have a little bit of that. Now, I'm not going to ignore it either, but I do think it's a bit of a wake up, no, wake up call, but it certainly makes you take stock of what's really important and what's not,
Yeah.
you know. But I think the whole world has probably felt that too, in a way, about, you know, lockdowns, people dying, you know, mental health. I mean, we would talk about that, you know. We see it, people that were kind of maybe teetering on the edge, and now all this happened and the world changes, and now all of a sudden, you know, people are kind of going off the deep end sometimes too. Or you can use all of that adversity that's happened to, I mean, we've all experienced something over the last couple of years, to make some profound changes in your life, or makes little ones even that maybe you weren't conscientious of before.
Well, I haven't had any brushes with death, but I will say I turned 40 recently. Well, not recently, a year ago. So I'm
Well, so to kind of catch up on some of the big things in your life, the last podcast we had, you were still a brown belt.
I was.
So you just got your black belt in jiu-jitsu, which is a huge milestone. How'd that change you?
You know, it was weird. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to get it this soon. I was still expecting to have a couple years left. And so, like, when the day came, I knew it was a possibility, but it still just didn't seem real. I don't know. I've never had anything in my life where I've worked so hard for so long for something and then had it happen. I mean, I've been working so long and so hard on music, and I guess I've seen some success there, but it's still not the goal that I haven't achieved the goal that I set out for myself. And, you know, I've got like 5 items on my bucket list currently. One of those items was get a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And this was something that I wrote. You know, that bucket list probably started a year after I started jiu-jitsu. Sure. So, and I've been training now actually this month for 12 years. 12 years now that I've been at this gym, and been doing jiu-jitsu. And I got was it 2020 in the fall that I got the black belt? Mm-hmm. You know, it changed my perspective on what a black belt is. I mean, when I first started jiu-jitsu, like, you know, you kind of have these ideas of what a black belt is, and you roll with a black belt and everything feels like magic, and it feels like they know everything, right? And I knew, I didn't think that when I reached that black belt pinnacle that I would know everything. And I'm not saying that I don't know a lot. I thought I'd know more. I thought I'd know more. Like, I thought I can still specifically pinpoint weaknesses in myself. And I thought I would have, you know, I'd be impenetrable or not have any weaknesses whatsoever, but they still exist. My opinion, I think, on a black belt, and I've thought about this a lot over the last couple years, is that I think a black belt is someone who is good enough at the principles that they can take their game any direction that they see, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's not that I know every single move. I am not a submission encyclopedia. Some people are like, hey, do you know this? And I'm like, I've never heard that word before. But I can get into a role with pretty much anybody and deal with them, and in many instances, submit them. But it's not because I know all this voodoo magic stuff. It's just that I've gotten very good at the principles, the basics. And, you know, you look at now as a black belt looking at white belts and blue belts coming up, they want to know all the voodoo magic stuff. They want to know all these different submissions and all these different, as soon as it's something they've heard before or thought about before, they're like, I don't need to know that. Or like, let's move on to something more exciting. And for me, the stuff that is the most valuable is the most basic stuff that we started learning the very first day I started jiu-jitsu. And it's also that stuff that takes forever to learn. Because, you know, when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I thought I'd walk in, I'm like, oh, I'll learn a couple moves, and in 5 years or so, I'll get a black belt. I thought it was about learning moves, and you certainly have to learn moves, but it's time on the mat reinforcing those principles. Your base, your balance, your frames, your wedges, your walls, your timing. All of that stuff is not stuff that can be taught, I don't think. I can give clues, but it can be learned, but it has to be discovered. And that only way that you're going to discover that is time on the mats. And so if I had any benefit, I didn't really have any, I wasn't a natural athlete. I'm still not a natural athlete. I have to work really hard to stay like average athletes. But the fact that I spent hours and hours and hours on the mat training with whoever, the fact that I generally stayed uninjured. I have yet to have to have a surgery due to anything in jiu-jitsu.
Touch wood, yeah.
Yeah, knock on wood. And I've certainly, I like to joke that I've injured every single joint in my body, but for the most part, I'm not sitting here in pain with those. So I think training wisely, training smart, and training a lot, just a lot of time on the mat is really what got me there and helped me understand those principles.
So outside of jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
And I always like asking this question to people who are, lifelong martial artists. What does something like getting a black belt do for the rest of your life?
It's interesting because in the immediate aftermath, I was depressed. I actually got depressed after
Really?
getting that black belt. And it wasn't because
you felt like, oh man, I checked it off. What now?
Yeah, it was a weird feeling. And I heard there's an author called Mark Manson. He wrote a book called The Subtle Art of Not
Yeah.
Giving a Fuck.
Yeah, I just finished it.
Yeah, I was kind of turned off by the title of the book, but I read it and really ended up liking it. Well, I heard him on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he talked about how he had this 10-year plan that he was going to do all this stuff. He was going to write, and when he was 50, he was going to have his New York Times bestseller, right? And then he could retire with his money and all that stuff. Well, all this stuff happened in basically a year for him. He wrote the book. It became a huge success, became a bestseller. And he said the same thing. He got depressed. And I think the thing for me was, like, I had been working so hard for so long for something that once that carrot was gone, it just didn't feel the same. I have no intentions of stopping jiu-jitsu, and I don't have any less passion for it, but it's different now. Like, I've achieved that thing. The only thing that I need to do really right now is to keep training. And if I keep training, then, I get the next degree and then the next degree. And if I keep training, then I'll get my coral belt by the time I'm 70. But it's kind of hard to think like a 10-year goal, thinking, okay, maybe in 10 years, I'll be close to a black belt. Well, 30 years down the road, for that next belt. And once again, I don't do this for the belt, but it is, that carrot does matter. That carrot does help motivate, and it kind of gives you that fuel to make it through the soreness and the time and the pain and all of that stuff. And so without that carrot, it just kind of got weird. And then I had to figure out, what the hell else am I going to work for? Right? I mean, I had one singular goal. I sacrificed the decade of my 30s for that black belt, and then I got it. Okay, now what? Now I've got the decade of my 40s. Now I've got the decade of my 50s. What am I going to do with them? And I think part of the depression was trying to figure that out. And I'm not talking like suicidal depression. I'm talking about like, man, I kind of feel empty. I don't feel as happy about a lot of things I used to feel happy about. And it kind of stuck around for a while.
You didn't feel like this sense of calmness, like, wow, I just did something that most of the population will never, ever do. I'm a badass.
Yeah, no, I was certainly proud of it. And like everyone, the first couple months I'd look down at it, I'd almost jump when I saw that black belt around. I really would. And so no, the strongest feeling I think was just, okay, how do I keep going? How do I motivate myself? But on the outside, all of the benefits that came with jiu-jitsu, and now the fact that you're black belt, you tell, and I don't walk around telling people I'm a black belt, but when they eventually ask and they find out that I'm a black belt, it's a different story now, because nobody knows what a purple belt or a brown belt is if they've never heard of jiu-jitsu. Everybody knows what a black belt is. And if you know anything about jiu-jitsu, having a black belt in jiu-jitsu is a really, really big deal. And so, yeah, I would say, the confidence helped, it lifted my confidence. But I think that confidence was there, the whole time I was training. You get to a certain level, you get to a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and you're like, I'm okay to go on the streets. And the benefits that I've seen, stuff that used to bother me, stuff that used to make me lose my temper, like it's not there anymore. Confidence in talking up and walking up and talking with strangers. Like I'm kind of an introvert and a homebody, and I have no problem performing in front of people. But if I am at a networking event, especially if it's like one of my wife's networking events, where it's a bunch of realtors, and like I'm not the business professional that they are, I'm just a guy that shoots guns and rolls around on the mat. I feel, it used to feel super awkward, but now it's like, no, I'm a black belt. Like, there's not much that you've accomplished. I mean, you've seen success in your field, but you quite haven't reached that success, that pinnacle success.
Yeah.
So, I would say the emotions that went along with it immediately thereafter was just it just felt a little bit weird. And I think it just proves the point that those belts matter, belt levels do matter, but you've got to be in the sport for the love of it. Because if I was just in it for the black belt and the accomplishment of that black belt, then I'd be done. Like why keep going? I've got the black belt.
I think the longer you stay dedicated to a craft, whether it's jiu-jitsu or whatever, you realize, I think, that there's so much more to learn. Like are you really an expert? Like, what's an expert?
Right. Right.
And I mean, I'm sure Rickson Gracie is still learning stuff.
Absolutely.
He's picking stuff up off his students. He's, and
maybe that's part of what I talk about. When I got it, I thought black belts would know everything. I feel like I certainly know more about certain things, but once you learn more about a subject, you realize how little you actually know about it, how much more there is to learn about it. But I think, the black belt skills are the skills where, okay, I can dive into this. I can approach this. I can accomplish it, even if it's going to take another 20, 30 years. But that's also what's interesting about it to me is that it's not something that you can just, I'm a handgun instructor. If somebody were work with me one-on-one every single day for a month, I could make them a really, really good handgun shooter. If somebody works with me one-on-one for a month in jiu-jitsu, they're still not any good at jiu-jitsu. And that's what's fascinating. Like it's something that requires time. There's just no way, there's no shortcut to do it. It's going to require time. And even when you get there, even when you start to understand it, you realize you're just breaking the surface of it. So yeah, that's kind of my black belt experience. I don't know if that's standard or what, but
I don't know. I've talked to, probably had access to talk to a lot more than you have over my time doing it. I think it's common to kind of feel like, now what? Like I get that part of it. But I think for me, it reinvigorated me and kind of gave me this, like I always felt like I thought with authority, and I always was very confident teaching jiu-jitsu. But I suppose it would be a bit like a substitute teacher going into a classroom versus a PhD standing in front of a bunch of college students. Is that once you have done the time and you have that belt, like there's just this like, yeah, you guys should listen to me. Like I know what I'm doing, and I can help you get I can certainly help you get better if you pay attention. But I do think though that people's experiences are different, but people like you and I who are entrepreneurs who take up jiu-jitsu or take up guitar will probably never be satisfied anyway. It's just the spirit of an entrepreneur is never to feel that settled that you can take your foot off the gas, because you have to be getting pushed, or something's got to kind of drive you. You got to have that raison d'etre, the reason to be every day.
Well, I think, a lot of people look at like me as a guitar player, or, you at jiu-jitsu or me at jiu-jitsu, and they see how good we are. Inside of our heads, we know all the things that we're not good at, and those are the things that we focus on. Or we see people who are way better than us, and we're like, okay, how do I get to that level? And so on one hand, yes, I'm confident in my skills. I know I'm good. On the other hand, I know I've got a long way to go.
But you know what a black belt does? A black belt doesn't let the opponent know the things we're
Oh yeah,
bad at.
absolutely, absolutely.
We
Yep.
can hide the things we're bad at against certain people because nope,
Yep.
they're going to take advantage of that.
I think the other thing that another positive note is it kind of helped me realize that my time and my instruction was valuable. So when I was coming up, in order to get as much time on the mats as I wanted, I'd train a lot of people for free. Yeah, come on in, let's train. And it wasn't, number one, I loved jujitsu and I wanted to share jujitsu with people and help them learn how to defend themselves. But number two, I just needed opponents. I need bodies to get my time on the mat. Well, now that I've got that, it's like I've really kind of reduced the amount of time that I do stuff for free. The people that I train with, mutually and don't charge for my time, are people that, I really respect and that actually value my time. Because, I was teaching classes here and there and nobody would show up. And it was like, all right, well, if you don't think what I have is valuable, then I'm not going to offer it to you anymore. And of course, as soon as I stop teaching, hey, are you teaching anymore? No, I'm not. I mean, you had the opportunity. You don't get it anymore. At least not for free.
Like we were coaching.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say that it helped me with that. And it also helped me with that, just understanding, that I do have expertise in certain areas and that I can't just give that expertise away, even though I'm a generous person and I don't want to be selfish and charge for everything that I do. My time is valuable and I need to be compensated for it. So that's that. So kind of stepping back, just because, everything that I've accomplished, there's been some other changes kind of outside of this. And I think one thing that you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong. So after your heart thing, you realized, you kind of said to yourself, well, there's all these things I've been putting off because, I don't know, like the dream house, the doing this, doing the vacations, doing this. I think you finally said to yourself, well, why am I delaying this stuff?
Right.
Why am I putting it off? And so as long as I've known you, you've lived in the same house and the gym has been kind of the same gym. Mm-hmm. I mean, the gym hasn't seen, we get new equipment in here and we're constantly changing stuff, but there's been some major developments, I guess, new house for you, and expansions with the business and the gym. So tell me a little bit about that.
Again, because you realize that you're mortal and that your time on the planet is limited and sometimes it's in your control, sometimes it's not. I think I was willing to just take more calculated risks, I will say. So yeah, like my wife and I were kind of house shopping, but not really, just for fun. And I finally was like, I wanted to move out of the neighborhood I was in. I wanted to get out of Omaha. I wanted to get out of the city. And I was like, what am I waiting on? Like, if I want to do this, I need that carrot in front of me. I need that reason to work hard and all that stuff. And man's home is his castle. We found our dream house and through your wife, actually.
Yeah.
And I said, fuck it, let's do it. And now I own a $500,000 home, which I love. And it's so peaceful every day. I leave early in the morning. It's the most incredible views. The sunsets out there are amazing. I mean, it's basically my dream home. And I mean, I could have been quite happy in the other one. But, when you do have these goals, I'm like, yeah, what am I waiting on? Like, I mean, I could wait 5 more years and financially, like, nothing's going to change probably that drastically. Like, I could afford it in 5 years' time, or I could do it now and enjoy it for the rest of my life, however long that's going to be. During COVID, when the fucking wheels were falling off the bus and business was awful, I had the opportunity to expand the gym, and everybody thought I was bonkers. And I said, this is exactly the time to do it, because it's not always going to be this way. It's going to suck for, whatever. I don't think anyone even knew how long it was going to be, but I knew it wouldn't last forever. Mm. And the opportunity came to expand the gym another 2,000 square feet almost, and to have a jiu-jitsu, dedicated big jiu-jitsu space, and build our podcast studio. Mm-hmm. And I said, fuck it, let's do it. And my wife, to her credit, she knows how I am, and she's really good at asking me the hard questions. Have you thought about this? Like, she doesn't discourage me, mm-hmm. but she'll be the voice of reason. Have you thought about this? Yeah, I have. Here's what I'm thinking. And she'll go, I don't know, but I trust you. And so we expanded the gym, and the space sat empty for about, I don't know, 7 months. In fact, the second or whatever time I got COVID, when I had no symptoms and felt perfectly healthy, I used the 10 days that I had to be in quarantine away from everybody to knock this place out, mm-hmm. and do the remodel and all of that stuff. And one of the other guys in the gym had COVID too. He was perfectly healthy too. And I'm like, hey, you're sick. I'm allegedly sick. Let's do some drywall work next door. Like, what the hell? And so we kind of used it again as, my kind of muse, mm-hmm. to develop this place. And I took a calculated gamble, and so far it's working out. I feel like in the last few months, our community that we have in the gym is back. Excitement is back, and just kind of seize the day. It's funny because I think you and I are both kind of stoic, probably by nature. And before I came back from Ireland, so I'm in the hospital. This would have been December of 2019. I'm watching my mom die of what we now know was probably, or with COVID. And there's nothing they could do. And she was basically in a coma, struggling to breathe. And you're just sitting there by her bedside, just thinking, this is fucking awful. Like, there's nothing I can do. I just have to be here. And you do a lot of thinking. And I was doing, I always read a lot, but there I just had lots of time to read. And I was reading some kind of piece of Stoic philosophy, Stoicism, and I came across the phrase memento mori, memento vieri. Remember you die, so remember to live. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my mom dying, and I thought, you know what? If this is it, like, she had a good life. We gave her a great life too towards the end after my dad had passed. As a family, we took care of her. We took her on trips. I mean, she really, even though she had health problems, lived a full life. And I thought to myself, I want to make sure I do that. Little did I know I was about to get a warning shot across the bow myself. But, and that phrase has kind of stuck with me. I have it in my office. I have it on a chain. I wear it on a bracelet, just to remind me that life is fragile. And you just never know. And if you get enjoyment while you're here, then that's kind of what it's all about. The money and all that stuff is cool because it helps pay for things. But like at the end of the day, like, I have a big house payment, mm-hmm. and I fucking love every second of it. Every penny of it is absolutely worth it, just simply for the view. You've seen the view that I have is just fucking incredible. And if it costs me that much to wake up every morning expressing kind of gratitude and going home at night, and so what? Yeah. Like, like, what else would I be spending? I'll probably be buying fucking jujitsu gis and guitars and
Yeah.
the shit that we know, motorcycles
Yeah.
and all the other stuff that, you know, guys sometimes do. So I don't know. It's not worth, to me, it's just not worth waiting on.
Yeah.
If you've thought it out.
Yeah, and there's certainly things to just like impulse buying, but also if it's something that, you know, you've been working towards and thinking about and kind of planning for, eventually you have to take that jump. I mean, we did something similar.
Yeah.
We've been living in the same house for 10 years, and so my wife's a realtor, and just kind of thought, well, these interest rates, they are not going to. They're going to go up eventually, so we might as well get in on this and make sure that that we can get a decent interest rate. So we got pre-approved and realized we were approved for a little bit more. Plus, we have a rental business kind of on the side. I've had one rental for over 10 years now, and we knew that we could get good money for the house that we were living in, and we could afford to move without it. So we made that leap too, and it's interesting because it's, you know, I grew up not wealthy. For sure. I wouldn't say there are certainly times where we were poor, but the idea of living in a house with a house payment more than $1,000 a month was terrifying to me. I just didn't think it was ever possible. And now, like when I first moved into that house, and you know, the house isn't. I mean, it's a really nice house. It was new construction. It's about, I don't know, 3,000 square feet. It's a ranch with, I don't know, 3-4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. It's a nice house, and I realized that I never actually thought I could accomplish something like that. And I'm not saying that I accomplished this. This is mostly my wife's work, because her real estate business has been going really well. If you followed real estate at all in 2020, in COVID and 2021, it's just been going gangbusters. So I've got to give most of my credit to the wife for that. But you know, the fact that we have the rental business helps us afford that as well. But those first couple weeks in that first house, I couldn't believe it. It didn't feel like real life. And then, yeah, I feel like over the 4th of July specifically, I feel a moment. And 4th of July, I was like, I just grew up. I felt like a kid most of my life. Like Logan Mize, I mentioned him already once. He's a country artist who's one of my favorites and also kind of a friend of our band. He's got a song, it's called Rock and Roll Band. And he's got a line in there. He says, "I've been 16 now for most of my life." And I resonated with that, because I've been chasing like immature dreams. I've been trying to be a rock star since I was in college, and I'm a 40-year-old man now, still chasing that dream, touring with a band and playing guitar on stage. When most guys my age have like quit and they're just playing in the church band or whatever. And so I was sitting on the patio with my wife on the 4th of July in the suburbs, watching kids down the street play and light off fireworks. And I'm just like, man, I'm grown up. And honestly, it's okay. I'm okay with it. And
yeah, because now you're a 40-year-old performing rock star who sleeps in his own house instead of on someone's couch.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's making all that stuff harder too. I will say you upgrade your lifestyle a little bit.
Yeah.
It's hard to step back, but you know, and every once in a while, and still even from time to time, we'll run into, you know, it makes things a little bit tighter. Our other house, essentially our rental paid the mortgage for the house plus some. We didn't have to really worry about anything, but it kind of made us both a little bit too comfortable, if you will, like financially. And I think making this big jump to this house has helped us kind of motivate and push forward and grow, you know, both of our businesses, grow as individuals, grow as a couple. And we're still kind of figuring all that out, but it was kind of a big life change that I really didn't ever. I don't know. You have visions of what you want. Like I have visions of me on tour buses and, you know, playing for sold out auditoriums and stadiums. And yeah, it'd be great if that comes true, but the likelihood of that happening is very small. And it felt the same way with this, of me living in a house that was, you know, nicer than anything I'd lived growing up. It just didn't seem, it's like, oh yeah, I'd like that someday, but it probably won't happen. But it happens. And so, same thing. I'm just trying to enjoy life because I've got that constant, that entrepreneurial drive of like, I need to find something, I need to fix it, I need to get better. I'm not good enough right now, blah, 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 blah. It's one of those things that just keeps ramping up in my head. And even just last night, I was just sitting there. I had to stay up late because my wife needed to make a listing go live at midnight. So we stayed up late and watched movies. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I've got a nice big leather couch. I'm watching movies with a surround sound on a big screen. Like I got a wall of guitars behind me that I can just pick. I have made it. If I can't be satisfied with this, I'm not going to be satisfied with anything.
Yep.
So I think part of my goal is not only, still pushing and driving because that's my nature, but also being satisfied with what I have and enjoying it for what I have
and I think
right now.
sometimes you need a little fire under your ass to, I got a bigger mortgage now. I better hustle. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think, not certainly people can take it to the extremes and just work themselves to the bone and then they die. And then their wife and her new boyfriend is enjoying your
all their
nice
money.
house. Yeah. That can happen.
Yeah.
But I plan on sucking every second. Not to kind of get morbid, but, obviously I've thought about my mortality. For me, at my funeral, I want every guy in that it won't be in a church, but whatever my funeral is going to be, I want every guy going, this motherfucker. And if that's happened, then you know that you've lived a good life.
Yeah.
And that if people are smiling at your funeral, and this is probably an Irish thing too, that you did people right, you were well liked, well loved, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what, that's all you can ask for. In fact, we had a guest, Kurt Padani, on our podcast in season 1. Kurt recently passed away after his long battle with cancer. And towards the end, I spent a lot of time with him. We've been friends forever. And, he was truly at peace with his decision to stop treatment and just kind of go on his terms, basically. And then at his funeral, you just kind of looked around at the impact that he had on so many lives. And you think, man, what would it even be like to be at a funeral where, what did you do? Like you worked 9 to 5 at a job where nobody probably even knew your name. That must fucking suck. And even though they're gone, again, he lived many, many lives.
Yeah.
And more lives than, and I said that at the eulogy that, that's how you want to live, is you want to have done a ton of shit while you're here and not just clock in and clock out and go to sleep. That's a boring life. And I know maybe it makes some people happy. It wouldn't be my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I want to fucking exhaust myself until the end because I'm happy doing it. I'm like, for us, hard work just feels normal.
Yeah.
It's like a normal thing, like leaving when it's dark in the morning and coming back when it's dark at night. Just feels like normal.
Yeah.
And, when people say to me, oh, you work 14-hour days. I'm like, yeah, but I love what I do. Like, I'm not my job doesn't even feel like work sometimes.
Right.
So what?
Well, and I think, we talked about like me reaching the pinnacle of a black belt or you reaching, getting your dream house or, me getting a house I never thought I'd actually able to afford. I think those things prove that there has to be something worth working for in order to be happy. Because once again, if the finish line, if that end goal, if you think that end goal is going to make you happy, it's not. It's going to make you happy for a couple days and then it's going to fade away. The reason that, jiu-jitsu is the thing for me is I just love practicing jiu-jitsu. The thing for guitar, like guitar is a mystery that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out. And that is what's exciting for me. I mean, these milestones along the way, they help, there may be a little bit of a carrot, but they don't bring lasting happiness. Success is not an end point. Success is, putting in every single day, what's going to make you proud when you go to bed that night. Like if you can go to bed at night thinking, I'm proud of the work that I did today, like that, I think is true happiness and contentment. There's no, you'd think like, oh, I just made $1 billion. I'm just going to be happy for the rest of my life. No, you're going to be happy for a couple days, and you're going to eventually that it just becomes par for the course, and you need some other challenge, something else to go after.
Speaking of other challenges and work, so you inadvertently, well, I guess not inadvertently, started a new business kind of through the podcast, or in line with some of the podcast ideology, I guess, and developed a whole beard line of products.
Yeah.
That's actually going really, really well.
Yeah, it's actually going pretty well. So,
want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I think it was probably in 2020 or so, I just decided I want to grow a beard. And I've always kind of had just like a short beard. And I was like, I want to try to grow a long beard. And so I got online and did some research. What's it take to grow a beard and make it look nice? And so I found a bunch of stuff, and I ended up buying some products, some beard oil, some beard balm, stuff like that. And I kind of found that I missed, I've been bald since I was 25, 26. And so I haven't had to take care of my hair for decades. And so having something like a little bit of grooming to do during the day actually it was enjoyable. And then these products that I started getting, like the beard oil, the beard balm, they have a scent to them. It smells good. And so you walk around and you kind of smell good and you feel good. And I was like, man, I really enjoy this. But then I found I'm kind of particular when it comes to scents, and I just couldn't find anything that I loved. So I'm like, well, I bet I could make this stuff myself. So I started experimenting with it, ordering some essential oils and I ended up experimenting for a good year, developing a couple different products, and then giving them out for Christmas gifts.
Yeah, you surprised me with Christmas.
Yeah, I've actually got one that's named after you. You got your signature scent for Emerald Mongoose. Yeah. And so, yeah, I gave out some gifts for that. And the way that I gauge whether something is good or not is by people's reactions. So if I give something and they're like, oh, cool, thanks, that's cool. Or if I write a song and like, oh, yeah, that's a good song, it's not good enough. It has to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
They got to rave over it.
Yes. And if you don't get that response, you're probably not going to have any market for what you're doing. And so with this, I gave it as a gift. I'm like, okay, we'll see where this goes. Well, sure enough, a month or two later, people I'd given it to were asking for more. And that was my, if somebody is asking you for business or asking you for something, that's a good clue that you've got something worth doing. So I ended up expanding the line. I've got 8 different scents. I do beard oil, beard balm. I do a cologne. I'm developing some other products, and I've been selling them at pop-ups. And they sell like crazy. People are happy. And I've recently put them on the website. So I started off with a different business name just because it was kind of separate from what we were doing. But I had this pop-up I knew was going to be pretty important. And I wanted to make sure that I had everything in line and set the way I want it to be before I went and did this pop-up. And so I asked you, I was like, do you think I could roll this into the podcast? Because Gentleman Badass is almost exactly the thing that I'm looking for with these beard products. And you said, yeah, that's cool. So I ended up using the Gentleman Badass logo on the products, and now they're all for sale on the website. So we'll probably put some advertising before this podcast about that product line, and I'm going to be developing the product line. And we're just going to be expanding the Gentleman Badass product line in general. I mean, we've got grooming products now. That line will expand, but you've been working with your own designs when it comes to like apparel and training gear. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so kind of during COVID and the whole supply chain thing broke down, a lot of the companies that I would normally order equipment for the gym, boxing gloves, shin guards, whatever, they were all having problems getting stuff. And the glove that you ordered last month was not the glove that showed up this month. And obviously we weren't as busy and I had some more time on my hands, and I decided, well, fuck it. I'm just going to find out who makes this shit for everybody else. And through a bunch of research, trial and error, samples, blah, 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 found a company in Pakistan who basically makes this stuff for everybody else. And back and forth over months, research this company. And it's hard to research a foreign company. And, you know, like you're sending money to Pakistan. Like, are you going to get something, or is it, you know? And so found a company that's been in business for 150 years, doing leather goods. And the current owner, or the current director of it, started at the company when he was 5 in the family business. His job as a 5-year-old was to gather up all the remnants and pieces of scrap on the floor, put them in plastic bags, cycle them down the street to a toy company where they would use it for toy stuffing. So at 5 years of age, this kid is working in the family business, and he's got his own little side hustle of how can I use up every morsel of scrap and still generate income. He's now the president. And so I started off, always wanted a custom, I ride motorcycles, and I always wanted a custom leather cut. And I know that the best leathers come from India, Pakistan region. So I custom designed this vest with like concealed carry pockets, a mag holder. And I'm like, all right, if nobody's making this, I'm going to just do it myself. And did that, and they knocked it out of the park. And so then I sent them a kind of redesign for some boxing gloves and redesign for shin guards. And over the course of months, developing different prototypes, settled on a glove that just so happy with. We actually redesigned MMA gloves. So I wanted to continue with the new expansion and all of this stuff that we were doing at the gym. I wanted to roll out after COVID heavy on the branding. And I also looked at our jiu-jitsu gis and ordered like a bunch of gis. And I was like, you know, I love this about this gi. I love this about this gi. I'm going to make a fucking Frankenstein monster gi here of the best of this and the best of that, and what I like about this and the collar and this. And I basically redesigned a gi from the ground up. And I also wanted the lightest gi possible. And so we did that too. And that's been phenomenal. Our rash guards, and I know you and Dave Koenig with the artwork are also doing that kind of stuff too, because there's a market for kind of unusual gear that some thought has gone into, be it the printing, the designs, or just the material. So yeah, I'm pretty excited with that. It's kind of turned into a bit of a monster, because now I'm getting other people wanting, hey, so I saw your new design on this, and could you make it for my gym? So now I have to decide over the next few months, do I want to become an import-export business?
Wholesaler?
I don't know. Like, you know, like there's some fish that I want to throw a hook at in the water, and then there's other things that I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that. And it's a good place to be. But yeah, I use the downtime in COVID to be busy and to research, and to start working on some of that stuff. And you guys, Koenig does some amazing artwork.
Yeah.
Most of it's all over your body.
Yeah, we'll probably end up having an episode with Dave Koenig. So I've got a lot of tattoo friends and a lot of amazing artists, and Dave is one of them. And Dave, a approached me. He's like, hey, I've got some jujitsu designs. I really want to start my own line of products. And he's got a book that's going to be coming out. I'm sure when we have him on the podcast, it'll be to promote that book. But the book is called Old Bellows to Men. And the idea is, well, honestly, I couldn't really tell you the concept other than it's kind of like an art book with his art, and it's kind of martial arts based plus I don't know, life based. It sounds like an interesting project. I'm interested to hear it. But he wanted to kind of roll out a line of clothing to go along with it. So we've started Old Bellows Jiu Jitsu. The website's just oldbellows.com. And Old Bellows is kind of a throwback term to like the lungs. You know, when they were talking about the old timey, you know, prize fighters or whatever, they're, you know, the old bellows in their lungs. And so that's where that came from. And so we designed a rash guard. Once again, kind of did the whole gift thing, gave it as a gift to see if people actually reacted. We got a good reaction to that. We've done some t-shirts, and we'll be expanding that line into gis and stuff as well. But, you know, what's kind of fun is the gi that you made for the gym actually features Dave Koenig's artwork of you in the gi.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's just kind of a great thing. I think we'll see if we can get those for sale on the Gentleman Badass website, and maybe
Koenig
even
did
more
my
of that.
motorcycle too.
Oh yeah, he also painted his motorcycle.
Yeah, I wanted him to do my bike, and I literally, he's like, what do you want on it? And I said, I don't care. I go, you come up with it, whatever you want is going to be awesome. And, you know, Dave does a lot of this kind of throwback, I don't even know what the style would be called, but he basically made this kind of bare knuckle type boxer, and I fucking loved it. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So one side of my tank has this old bare knuckle guy, and then the other side has a shamrock with some kind of Celtic wavy swirl stuff. And my bike's an old, like it's a 2004 Dyna. It's an old Harley. But when I pull up at lights, everybody looks at that thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of see him because there's no Harley emblems on it, nothing like that. And you just kind of see him do a double take, like, what the fuck is that thing? So yeah, he killed it on that too.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm excited. I've been a fan of Dave's artwork for a long time, and so the fact that he, you know, approached me to help him run this business is an honor. And I'm just hoping I can help him make it successful. So I guess that kind of leads us towards maybe a wrap up. Like moving forward, what do you want to see happen with the gym, with the other aspects of the business, with the gym, with the podcast? What do you see moving forward?
Well, the podcast, like I said, I think the podcast initially, for me, it was a response to the kind of counterculture of toxic masculinity and kind of denying masculinity. And I mean, that's what we called it, the Gentleman Badass. Like, you know, and I still very much believe in that credo. I mean, I live it every day. But obviously with the initial success of it, and like you said, it's not monetary success. It's success that people want it. They love it. They're waiting on it. And they like the message and the guests that we've had, and we've been fortunate. But building this studio where we can literally knock out episodes. I mean, we see each other every day.
Yeah.
So like now that we have our own in-house studio in the gym, we can literally knock these things out whenever we want.
Come in, sit down, hit record.
Yeah. So I think now that we have kind of a home base, like we've grown up. We're you know, we're at the block watching the kids doing fireworks kind of thing. Like, okay, we own a studio now. Like we're not just borrowing space and sneaking in here and there and doing it. I'm excited to see what this does, what the kind of guests. I mean, you know, we have a list of some fucking amazing guests lined up that are all wanting to do our podcast. And I'm excited to see how those interviews go. I love this art form of just sitting down. We still have to do our drunk podcast.
Yeah.
But of just kind of sitting down and just shooting it,
Yeah.
and like I said, we've been fortunate to have some great guests. So I'm excited about that. Um, the gym continues to be kind of a Medusa's monster a little bit still. Like it's still growing and developing heads. Um, so I'm just kind of waiting to see how that all works out and the changes we've made and some of the new additions that we've done. Um, there's some things on the horizon also. Some business opportunities that have come my way that I may jump on. Some consulting work that I'm excited about. A new program at 88 Tactical that we are developing, which you're going to be involved in too. I guess we've already done some of it. That I'm really excited about looking at. I think originally when we looked at this program, we were looking at law enforcement as being the potential customer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we've realized that everybody needs to know this stuff. So I'm excited about the development of that coming up. And I'm excited about putting a pool in my house in the spring.
That happening finally?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We put it off for COVID and all of that stuff. And again, now I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Basically, it's like having a vacation home. And the original homeowner had planned on a pool. He got all the landscaping done, but apparently he didn't pull the trigger because he had young kids and was worried about the kids walking out the basement into the pool. So we're just kind of finishing what that house and the land was designed to be. We're just kind of finishing that. So, grandkids, I got 5 grandkids and I never in a million years thought I'd be a granddad.
Yeah.
And I fucking love it. It's a blast. It's fun. And I'm young. Like, I'm not the curmudgeon-y old grandpas. Like, fucking turn that TV down over there. I'm the one that's wrestling with them, putting them in headlocks and doing all that, So, yeah, I'm just enjoying life, man. Playing gigs again, too. We added a fiddle player to our band. He's been a great addition and kind of re-energized me. He's forcing me to become a better guitar player. So, I just think it just all goes along with what we try to instill in people is this, like, you don't stop. You reinvent yourself. You look for new challenges. Maybe you look at old challenges with different eyes, and like you're constantly looking for new things. Not because you're unhappy or unfulfilled. It's because they're there.
Yeah,
and they can be done. It's as simple as that. We're not chasing some dream because you're going to be devastated if you don't get it. I'm just chasing it because it's there.
Yeah. Kind of fun to do.
Yeah. So what about you? What do you want to see out of all this in the next year?
For the podcast, like, I certainly want to get more episodes recorded and start releasing those regularly. On the other end of it, though, I'd like to kind of try to turn it, movement might be too big of a word, but I'd like to turn it into more of a community rather than just people that listen to us and then forget about us. I'd like to try to start bringing some of those people together. I read a book called Of Men and Boys, and I can't think of the author right now, but it was written last year, and it's nice because he talks about a lot of subjects that a lot of people are too afraid to talk about. And essentially men and boys are in crisis right now. And the thing that really changed it for me, I would consider myself one of those people that was in crisis, a dozen years ago. But finding my way in here and understanding and learning, like the work ethic that I learned in here, the skills, the respect, the confidence, everything that I learned in here, I want to try to help other people do that. And I think the podcast is a good opportunity for that. So I'm hoping that we can do some things outside of just recording episodes, where we can get people maybe meeting up in person. Maybe we can develop an online community. We can help people with those problems that I had. Back when before I got in here, I didn't know what it meant to be strong. I didn't know what it meant to be lethal. I didn't know what it meant to be confident. I didn't know any of that stuff, and it's kind of hard to figure out. Like, you have so many people. You've got these. What's the dude that was just arrested? Andrew Tate. You've got the Andrew Tates out there of the world, and maybe some of what he says is inspirational to people, but the overall message, I think, is fairly poor. So I kind of want to have a platform where we can help guys where maybe they don't know how to be a man. Okay, here's the first couple steps, and help them along the way. So that's kind of my ultimate goal with this, and then turning it into an actual functioning business. I think we have some opportunity here. I think we can serve people. I think we have a lot of value that we can get out to the world, and it might be arrogant to think that we can actually change a big portion of the country or the world, but I feel like we have to have people doing what they can do. And even if we only affect a dozen people, 100 people, 1,000 people, those people can go off and have effects on other people. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for over the next couple months. If nothing else, well, not the next couple months, next couple years. If nothing else, we'll put out this content. Hopefully this content will help you as you're listening to, strive for a little bit more, be a little bit better, be a better man, be a better husband, be a better provider, be all of those things that we're called to be and that are very fulfilling, but so few people really know how to do. And I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying you're an expert, but we have access to a lot of different experts, and I want to bring those experts in, start getting that information out to the world or out to our audience, if nothing else, and helping them all be better. So that's my goal.
Yeah. Speaking of our audience, by the time this episode gets released, and I think this will probably be, I'm sure, episode 1, season 2. If there are things that you, the audience, want us to talk about, look into guests, let us know too. We've kind of found out by accident that we have a massive outreach within just our community here that we know, and very connected through layers to lots of very cool people, cool stories. If we can help you guys out in any way with content that you want to hear us talk about, or address, or guests that we may have access to, shoot us a message and let us know. What's the best way to reach us?
TheGentlemanBadass.com, the website, is the best, or our email is GMBA, like the initials for Gentleman Badass, GMBA podcast@gmail.com. I'll have that all on the website. So the website's probably the easiest, but we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can find us anywhere on there. Follow, shoot us a message. I try to be responsive, and I try to be open, because if I'm missing something, if there's something that you guys are going to find valuable, I'd like to see if we can provide that. So hit us up, let us know. We'll be relaunching the website here pretty soon. So the website's going to have some new features that are pretty cool. And hopefully it can be a good resource for you in what you're learning and what you're trying to do to get better. So any final words? Anything to say to
No,
finish
just
up?
Thanks for the support. Sorry we took a little hibernation, but we weren't sitting around on our asses.
Yeah, we had some things going on.
Yeah, we were busy. We were prepping.
Yeah.
And getting better, and so we're excited to kind of share what we have, what we built, and see where it goes.
Perfect. Sounds good. So, we'll be back later with some other episodes. We've already recorded one episode that's pretty exciting, and I think we've got quite a few more coming that are going to be really well liked. So, stay tuned. Thanks so much for sticking with us, and we will see you next time.
Peace and hair grease.